June CAS Human Service Advisory Board meeting to order, and I will have Blair do a roll call.
Mr. Vettel,
Here.
Mr. Steen,
Here.
Ms. Fry, Ms. Haugen, Mr. Davison, Mr. Madler,
Here.
Ms. Saar, Ms. Bollinger.
Here. Thanks, Blair. The first item after our roll call is approval of our April 7th meeting minutes that were in the packet that Blair had sent out. If you all had time to review any changes or additions, if not, a motion to approve.
Moved.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed, same sign. They're approved. Next item, moving right along, and I'm going to turn it over to Julie, our vice chair, is the acceptance of the zone director's evaluation. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Julie.
Sure. Over the past month, I had the opportunity to work on the director's evaluation, performance evaluation for the past month. We spoke about it at our last meeting. Samantha laid out a very clear timeline for us to follow. Had the opportunity to put out the evaluation form to the advisory board. Had a great response from this group, so thanks everybody for providing input about Gail's performance over the past year. I also had the opportunity to engage with the director of zone operations from the state and get the input from the state as well. Had the opportunity to sit down with Gail last week and share the feedback on her performance over the past year, to talk about our goals for the coming year. We had a good conversation, good dialogue, and offered our thanks for her work and our appreciation, and had a good conversation about the year ahead. So I think everything went well.
Yeah, I appreciate the time and I appreciate everybody's effort. I think we do need a motion to accept the review. I think that's how we did it last year. I'm not quite sure.
So moved.
In a second. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Thank you for your time and efforts. The next item will probably take a little bit more time is the review of the standards of operation. In April, it went to Julie, but it's addressed, and the memo is in your packet, was a memo from, well, the interim commissioner and Jessica Thomason with Human Services, as well as Kristen Hasbargen, Corey Peterson, and Michelle Gee, both with the department with Children and Family Services and economic assistance. But it is the first time that the standards of operations, which is really our benchmarks as 19 human service zones across the state, is kind of our compliance document that quarterly will be given to our boards, sent out to our boards, and sent out to us as directors and reviewed. So I know there's a lot of information there. Prior, I had provided you this. That is the same information that is in the document. And I thought after I looked at it again this morning, I probably should have put that in here first. So I'm not sure if you all got a lot of time to review it, because it is a lot to digest every time I look at it. And we've been looking at it for a little bit as a Human Service Directors Association, and then internally here with our managers and our supervisor teams in each department and administration, we've been looking at it, and the dashboards that kind of feed that document. But the metrics that are fed, those 10, they're actually right now 9 tier 1, I think that's what they call them, metrics that are kind of measured. The first 5, if you go to page 6, is probably the easiest way to look at it. That is quarter 3. These are state fiscal year quarters. So that is January, February, March. So starting with the most recent quarter that closed, that we have the data on. I'm just going to tell you kind of how to read that one pager, because that was my first goal to get done. Under that column that says quarterly performance stats, and if you go down that, so measure 1, tardy transaction errors, and then it says 92.3, your eye will go to that green highlighted area. Our CAS Human Service Zones data for that quarter is the unhighlighted marks going down that quarterly performance stat. So I highlighted mine here in pink. It's these marks. That's where our dashboards said we were at that end of March for that quarter.
Bill, can I just ask a question before you go too far into this? So you get this report. Do you have any chance to provide feedback before they issue it? I mean, is there any or they just come and do a bunch of measurements and here's your report? I'm just curious how that works.
Um,
Any clarifications that you've written?
no, we pretty much get the report.
It'll-
So, for example, thanks, Rick, for that question. For example, child welfare. So there's some of our child welfare supervisors in the back of the room. Carissa, our manager, couldn't be here. So I said, I might need your guys' interpretation on some of this. I think I can handle some of it. But the first 5 measures that are on this report, or these tier 1 standards, the first 5 measures, 4 of them, well, all 5 of them are child welfare. So they're basic performance measures that our team always, that's what our workers do. 4 of those 5 measures are federal measures, correct? I'm saying that fairly correct. That, so we, that's what our workers, our supervisors, we strive to meet those standards that are reported to the state through our frame system. That's the state system that our workers put their information in. That data's fed into the state system called frame, and that data's fed into a federal system called the it's the AFSCAR system, up to the feds for a report, for lack of a better word. But it's done on a yearly basis, not a quarterly basis. So when we're only looking at a quarter, we don't have the whole year here to see, maybe one quarter you're a little down because you make some corrections. So for example, the tardy, number 1, tardy transaction errors. Every zone in the state should be at 100%. That we did not get to choose what, or have input. I shouldn't say choose. We didn't have input on setting the percentages that met these standards. Those standards were presented to the directors. And if you go to the information booklet, for lack of a better word, when it talks in, what page is that in the packet? Those tardy transaction errors are related to, on page 31 in your packet, those are really related to why it would be preferred that the state meets as a whole 100% of that, because it's related to a financial penalty federally, basically. And it explains it there. If North Dakota is not found in compliance, a federal penalty of 1/6 of 1% of all state claims for 4E foster care administration and training will be imposed. The one thing, and you foster care supervisors can help me out here, I will say about that, it is administrative. It's about when a a youth ends foster care, out of foster care. It's an administrative thing. It's not, what do I say? Yeah, it's not service related. It's about timeliness of closing. It's the paperwork part of it. So if we roughly have 150, 200 kids going in and out of foster care, it's likely we're not going to be at 100% because it's it's a lot for workers to keep track of. I'm not saying it's not important, but it's a lot easier if your volume was not heavy of people going in and out of, like a smaller zone with 5 or 10 foster care youth, or 20, even 50. Might be a little easier to track and not forget to put that in. Does that make it any less important? No, but it will be difficult. Is that fair for me to say?
And that's what I was kind of getting at, is that there's an
There's-
explanation for some of these, I'm sure, but if there's no, I don't want to call it rebuttal, but any response required, then you're just going to get hammered with what you get.
Right. And there's some of those. So that's an example in that first one. There is on, let's see, visits for in-home, number 3. As you can see, we should be to meet at 90%, and we're at 54 currently. That is not a federal requirement. That is a state metric of 2 foster care visits when they're in home, and that's an issue with the data. It's exactly what you're saying, Rick. It's an issue with the system we have to put it in, that more the system is set up maybe for a traditional family, 2-parent with the kids, but maybe if a family is not a traditional, or there's more than a few kids in that family, and one of the children now came out of that family unit and is living in a different family unit, but we're not able to count it that way in that frame system that we have to report it in. And that's the situation. So we can explain that if we get to the point of needing to write something up. Because I did ask, I said, why are we here? Our supervisors team and our manager in family services, we've gone through all of these. There's an explanation. Or the ones with face-to-face visits, we're at 78.9. Where we need to be is at 80. Well, you're the accountant. I round that up to 80. 78.9 in my book is 80%. But that, in those face-to-face, it is time-stamped. Like, so if we get the report and we got the report at 1 o'clock and our worker got out there, it's 24 hours a case, right? And if they got out there at 1:05 the next day, we're out of compliance. So,
Okay. That's a
You
long,
know.
long answer to what I was kind
Yeah.
of thinking what the
Yeah.
answer would be, but I get it. I mean,
Yeah.
so I didn't think you had a chance to go back and say, well, wait a minute, this isn't right. Just, nope, here's your report, live with it, talk about it later if you have
Yeah.
to.
and this is really the first time they're bringing it out. We've seen them as directors. I think we've seen them probably.
Everything.
Mhm.
But was there, so you're talking about paperwork. So is there new responsibilities that people had as they're bringing out this dashboard, or are they just collecting the data better? Or did we have to change some of our processes of what we do and the paperwork or the technology we use or anything? They're just creating a better dashboard?
I think it's really on that back end of the dashboard. I don't think especially in child welfare, and I'm not sure in economic assistance, there was some issues with how the spaces data was being pulled.
Yeah, I guess I'm not being very clear.
Yeah,
What
the work didn't change.
the work
from-
didn't change.
No.
That really was the question I
No,
was
the
asking.
work didn't
They weren't
change.
asking us to do any additional work to get to this dashboard.
No.
They're just figuring out how to collect the information on the backside.
Right. How to get it correct to
Did
pull
we
in.
have any input on the ones you said 1 through 4 were kind of federal? Let's just say
Yep.
federal, or 1 through 3, whatever you said.
Yep, 1 through
Did
5.
we have any? Did we have any input outside of? So number 1. So number 3 is a federal.
Number 3 is not.
Is not. Okay. So we set that as a state, what we thought the number should be.
CFS did.
CFS did.
Mhm.
Did we have input on what we
Not
thought
that
that
I'm
should be?
aware of. No.
And this just represents our zone. There are all the other zones, and that will be,
Yep.
there'll be an aggregate report in regards to that.
Yep. It's these colored pages.
Yeah, I'll look at that. I had looked at the first few pages. I
Yep.
hadn't looked.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I pulled out of this report. That was the first time kind of I saw the comparisons. And I first thought I really don't care what the other zones are doing, but it did kind of shed a light when you pull out the single county zones. And then some of the smaller, less populated, yeah, some of them are at 100% because they don't, or not applicable. It means they didn't have anybody going in or out. They're not reporting on it because they don't have anybody. But I'm like, we're pretty, we're doing well. I'll just say that.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I think the dashboard is a good thing. I wouldn't get too worked up with it about right away. Either way, just kind of,
Okay.
and it's just going to get better. And as you give more feedback to them, there's more dialogue that happens. The report should get better and stronger and be more reflective of the level of work that they're expecting or that we're doing. And so,
And
I think-
probably sidetracking you here, Gail, a little bit, but take a look at page 12, and I'm sorry, maybe getting ahead of you, but, there's a measure here that just is not working. I mean, number 3, it's just, everyone's in the red. So, and this has been going on, I'm guessing, since they started this measurement.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously something's really wrong with the measurement, or we need to retool how we're doing this. I mean,
Right.
it can't be, this is the right measurement, you're doing everything you're supposed to do. It's a problem. So, I mean, so you look at that, it's like, well, this is a mess.
Right.
So, anyway, that was kind of part of my question as well. So, okay.
I had the same thought about it would be helpful to know the difference between which are federal requirements, because we absolutely need to, do a better job there, or which ones are state set that the zones can provide input on. Because if that's a state set one, it isn't working, and can we have input on that?
And or is it the data? Because I know, I know there is a struggle with the frame system and the data in the frame system. It is an old system, and I believe the new system's coming, but it's years away. So the accuracy and all of that data, the thing we have to remember, and I'll focus on Cass. I know our teams, we're doing a great job in meeting timeliness and keeping kids safe, and that's key, and doing those face-to-face visits in foster care in the homes. We're getting those things done. Some of that, when we dig deep into it, we have explanations on what that is. Maybe some of that administrative things with closing of the case, and maybe a foster provider got a payment that wasn't supposed to get a payment because that was closed. Well, there might be, I'll admit, maybe there's a few of those that get through. Are they a huge dollar amount? No. Like we typically recoup those. They're caught soon enough. So that's a good thing. There's a lot of data here, but I think overall I agree. If you look at there's a lot of red, there's something there. Something's wrong with the data, and that's the one I said frame doesn't really reflect differences in a family unit type, right? Is that a good description? Yeah, so it is a data thing, so. So we talk about it, there's things in the dashboard our supervisors and can look at now, and we can dig down, so I agree, there's a lot of good things from a management and a supervisor level we can look at. Um, you can go down a rabbit hole really quickly in those dashboards too, so I always like, you can get lost really quickly. In EA, they're helpful, because we can look at workflow, we can look at things by worker, and I think Shayna would agree, they are helpful. And I think early on, I don't think the dashboards in economic assistance were accurate at all. And now I know they're more they're much more accurate. I feel very confident, and especially since they pulled number 10 out, because we're just working on error proofing now. In our EA, with work item processing volume number 6 and processing timeliness, we're exceeding in both of those. So that's good for our economic assistance team. And then we have administratively, I'll just say, our budget reports. Shelley does a wonderful job. We're always meeting those. And then our personnel reports are, they call it a position control log. Our admin team is always meeting that and getting that in as accurately as possible, as requested by our state partners. So
Tell us more about the corrective action. If we're found to be non-compliance for 3 quarters in a row, what happens?
well, I was reading up on that right before I came up here. I was like, oh, I should know. If there's more than three Fs or failures to meet standards, the department works with the zone to deliver training, it says. That hasn't happened, like, that I know of across any zone as of yet, because they haven't really started tracking it. So they will be working with a zone to help with that. So the next, after that, if there's 5 or more measures that, so if we have 5 severe failures, or so 5 S's, so that would have to be a few quarters that we're getting 5 S's. This is a hard thing to, I wish they used something else than S's and F's, because right now we only have
We have
2 and 2, so we're good. Then there's a corrective action plan that I, as the director, would have to write and submit to the department. That's how I understand it. If nothing changes from there, if the zone keeps going down, then the board would become involved, it sounds like. If there's the trigger for the next level, a performance improvement plan, would be that the Human Service Board would implement a progressive discipline action for the zone director. And that would be with a severe failure to meet in 5 or plus measures for 3 or more consecutive measures. So that is even, like, you're really down in the bottom. I never expect that Cass Human Service Zone will be down there. And then after that, there would be a structural realignment. The zone would be, I think, part of another zone by that point in time, if nothing would be done.
Nothing begins until you have 3 plus in the F or the S.
Correct. And the first one would be like, they'd say, we're going to come out and give you some training. I think that's how that would go.
So, Gail, so these are activities So, I mean, what are the outcomes that are supposed to happen because of these activities?
Okay,
I mean, you could put your budget reports in on time and they all could be in a negative balance and you could overspend everything and that wouldn't be a very good outcome regardless of whether you got them in on time.
go to page, where did they have? It's not meant to be, they're not meant to be outcomes
Oh, they're activities.
or activities, right? Performance, if page 30, it talks about tier 1 are administrative measures, tier 2 are performance outcomes. So time to reunification. So these 10 measures are meant to be tier 1 measures. So more administrative measures that feed into, hopefully, because zones are meeting those tier 1 measures, are intent. It says that tier 1 measures, these items listed as tier 2 and tier 3 measures are intended to be illustrative as a foundation for future discussion. So 1 through 10 or 1 through 9 now are really only meant to be tier 1. So they are meant to be not outcome based, just activity performance.
Yep, that's what I was looking for. Thanks.
Measure, it describes the measure. I find it helpful. The last bullet is, why does this measure matter? So it kind of ties into the why we
Okay.
would track it, what it would feed to. So it does that for each measure in the back.
Yeah, clearly I need to read through this.
Yeah, that was helpful when I think about that, because it's not talking about that outcome based part of that as of yet. And there was another.
Yeah, that's okay. You answered the answer is there. I just need to dig into it a
Okay,
little
yeah,
more.
here it was. Tier 1 measures are not intended to be reflective of programmatic outcomes. Tier 2 measures or overall population level indicators. So that's what they said. So that's where this is at this point in time. So this was through March, April, May, June. The end of June, the end of June will be our last fourth quarter. So everybody back there, make sure your team gets all their stuff in. That's what I say. That data will be pulled now, again, the end of June for this fourth quarter. Like I said, to me, I'm still trying. Every time I look at it, I find something different or more. Or then if you go on our dashboards, you can't go on it, but if you get in there, I get really lost and I can get really down a rabbit hole is what happens. And then it's 3 hours later and I'm like, oh, oops. But it is, I'm fairly pleased with our third quarter. It does give us a guide. It does give me sometimes a pit in my stomach when I think, oh, it's coming out. But our team is doing a good job. I'm confident of that. If we need to move the arrow, I say, I'm like, let's not look at oh, we need to be at 100. Let's make sure we're moving ahead from the last place we were at. As long as we're not going backwards, we're keeping the same, we're moving forward. That's all that I ask. So, questions, thoughts, input? I'm open to any thoughts or.
So is it possible staffing levels we have to make a face-to-face review once a month? It is possible.
Yep. Yep, this is for case management now. So these are, because for kids in foster care, it's required to make at least one face-to-face with with all the kids. And yes, for kids that are, we consider in-home, providing in-home, so they're not necessarily in foster care, but we're providing. So that's a little higher risk. We're keeping them out of foster care system, we'll say. So we would want to make sure we might be seeing them a little bit more than twice. But with our staffing level, it is possible. Megan said it back there. That's a data error. We're at 100. We're at 100%. Yep. Yep. They didn't reach out. We got this. Julie got it in the mail. I got it, or we got it in the email. And I said, why are we here? That doesn't seem right. So, correct. Correct. Correct.
Well, then I think it goes back to that rebuttal phase. So then you get the report, then do you have an opportunity, you've already expressed that where there's data issues, you've had a conversation. Tell us about that.
And say like, this doesn't seem right.
So you've gone to the state partners that are in charge of this and you've had that conversation.
And said, we've looked at this, and they're aware that that is not correct. And there's more, probably other zones doing the same thing on that. So that's good. I feel confident as long as I have an explanation, we can explain it. No, because it's pulled out of the system. So but we can explain it. We've been told as long as we can explain it, that's all right. So I will be able to argue, like, I don't have this many in the, what column is that? The S column. I should only have one in there for this thing. I would write something and say, take that one out because we do have 100% in that. So, because Megan told me so. Just kidding. But yeah, so that's a system issue that doesn't work very well with that. So we have an explanation for that overall. And I think our state partners are learning too, but there's nothing we can work on that frame system to get that to work correctly, as long as we know and we can explain it. And go from there and share with our boards to know that. We'll see in a year from now if that's still the case. Matt. I guess I think it's good to have the data. It's always good to have data. I just want to make sure we look at it, we evaluate it, and then we're heard if there are some issues. But you're correct, we didn't really have, those are expectations of our state partners for those data, those percentages. It's really fed off the federal guidelines, both for economic assistance and for child welfare. And I think I'm confident what we're doing at CAS is meeting those guidelines. When you ask Rick if we have the staff to do it, I'll just be kind of happy to say, like, I don't want to, we're getting close to being fully staffed in family services. Maybe by the end of this month. Yeah, I don't want to say it, but we're very, very close. We have a young tenured team but we're getting so close, and we have that PM shift now, so um, the tide has definitely turned, so that is great. Our timeliness is amazing for that's doing well. You know, if this would have maybe come out a year ago, it would have maybe looked a lot different. But we would have had an explanation to that too, without having the numbers of staff. Hard to do. So, any other thoughts? If you look at that, you want to get together, we can go through it. I'd appreciate some other eyes on it as well. It's helpful. I've looked at it, but you know, somebody from the outside, not in it, some questions. It's helpful for me to look at that. I'd be willing to spend some time with each of you individually too. So just let me know on that. I see Jen's on there now. Okay. Anything else? Otherwise, we will move on. I think, oh, to the operations report. One thing I forgot to put in the operations report, I think it June, it's not confirmed yet, FNS, which is Food Nutrition Services. It's a federal, I think the Denver office comes out here. We always get a federal review for SNAP, and we don't have it totally confirmed. They will be coming out in June. I think it's the 17th through the 19th, but I think it's going to be virtual. I just heard late in the day Friday, and it's evaluation and training, education and training. Yeah. So we haven't heard anything more. As soon as I get any information, usually there's an entrance to that review and an exit. I'll invite you as a board. You can surely sit in on that, but I think it might be the 17th through the 19th. Haven't had that totally confirmed. One thing I did want to, no, Robert left, but been engaged with the commission, and I did share some things with Commissioner Vettel since he sits on this board, but have sat in on some building committee meetings as well, and then had the opportunity to sit in with JLG. I think that was back in January stuff, that the commission is working with to do a space assessment for the county, for some of their buildings, especially this campus, meaning the courthouse, the annex, and the building, the Johnson, whatever that's called, R.D. Johnson building next door to the annex. I do believe the commission probably in the next month or so will be looking at that assessment at one of their meetings. And I wrote a little bit about that, having the opportunity, and we will do whatever we can as the zone. Of course, to advocate for space needs for the zone, but to be also a good partner as a county department as well. I do believe there'll probably be need for movement and flexibility and all of that in the next little bit, but I wrote a little bit about that in there, and I will make sure and keep everybody abreast about that. We did have, or we currently do have, some state partners from HHS that have, ever since I've been here, utilizing some office space. They have been HCPS staff, foster care licensing. They're now state employees. They're not county employees like the zone, and childcare licensing. And I did notify all of those state partners that they needed to vacate by August 1st. So I know whatever happens in the annex, that space will be needed to move people around if they're going to start remodeling or whatever, or moving things around. So they will be the space will not be needed, or, you know, it- if the county doesn't have space, we do not have to provide space to a state partner. So that's, they need to be out. And then recently, we've been working with our sheriff's department, and we provided some training to our zone team, starting with family services, um, our leadership team, and then to each department. And I think this week to our economic assistance department. We are workers in the public buildings, and we have public spaces, like probably you're also aware, those of you that work in public buildings with public spaces. And we're going to be working with signage and also informing our workers on what in those public spaces, what is allowed from the public that can come in, and how to deal with public that comes in, and then making sure we act appropriately and allow that to happen. So Sheriff Johnner has been very good in providing some training on that. And in the fall, they will actually be at our county department head meeting. Actually, the sheriff will be adding some of that training for all departments in a training that's going to be happening this fall for everybody. So it's really good reminder for all of us. But we just had some incidents that happened recently at the zone. So we have a lot of new staff. And I thought, well, yeah, I guess I'm starting my 4th year. I remember talking about when I first started, it's a good reminder. We have to do it yearly. So we all are up to date on all of that. So I wrote a little bit about that. And then I gave a little just brief update on some of the bills that at the end of the legislature that have affected the zones. And I see Jen is on virtually. One, which one was that? 1095. We'll be talking a little bit more in the future about that. CPS liaisons in school districts, but that kind of morphed into a bill that we as zones across the state will be working with our school districts and coming up with a groups or committees to meet twice a year and then be required to provide reports back to the Human Service Zone Board, the school district, and the Children's Cabinet. So I'm not quite sure what that all looks like, but that's one of the ones. And then I just put some other things up there. We also did budget update. We did our recalc. And shortly after our recalc, we do our budget for 2026 because the state, of course, is on their state fiscal year, so they need that budget. It always gets me, but we've done that. As part of recalc, with the roll-up dollars, I requested 2 more vans, so that will go to the commission for the consent agenda today. So we're increasing our zone fleet of vehicles for our direct costs. And then our budget, although for 2026 has been submitted, although we haven't got official approval from the state as of yet, but that was in there. And then each of the programs provided a bit of an update there. And then Samantha always does she actually puts this great dashboard together for the monthly metrics. So if anybody has, or if you have any staffing questions, we're, I think, still doing very well with that. Both her and Blair. Blair's been in a lot of interviews lately. We've been doing lots of interviews. Our rosters have been really good. We've had really good rosters for child welfare. I think fairly decent ones. We've just now started having a few openings in economic assistance. I'm always surprised when people don't show up for interviews. It surprises me. That happens in economic assistance. just surprises me, but I guess it happens.
Across multiple services.
It's ser-
Programs.
it's duplicated services. So you want, oh, okay.
With the data that's provided, it does not segment out. So if one person, and Shane, I'm gonna, as I speak, nod or bail me out. If one person applies to 4 programs, that's 4 individuals, and there's not a way to remove duplicates of the individuals across the programs, the way that the data is provided.
Yeah, I don't think we can, because we went to our state partners and asked that, but I will ask again. We can filter it by program. We can filter it by
Thinking of-
program.
About it that way, that number's not as helpful then, right? So maybe we can remove that number and find a different number that might be more helpful. Yeah, because that. Mhm. No.
Maybe we should show if we had the programs and then the number of.
That's what I thought this was.
Mm-hmm.
Question is,
Mhm.
how many individuals served?
By program, we can find, so the roll number probably isn't helpful.
Yeah.
I'm John Doe, and I'm one person, I get 17 services on one person. How many people do you serve?
Yeah, right.
That's
Unduplicated.
just curious. I saw that number just jumped out at me, that's why I asked.
Yeah, we spent some time going
That's why
through.
that number's bigger, right?
Mm-hmm.
Bigger,
Mm-hmm.
and it'll surpass the number of people at the college.
Sure.
They've asked, so I'll pose that question. Like, I want unduplicated number. I don't care how many programs they're on, but I want the unduplicated number. No, our state, Michelle Gee. I don't think it talks across, like Medicaid doesn't talk to SNAP and SNAP doesn't talk to.
Yeah, you'd have to have the same identifier for each individual
that's-
across, and so they have different ones, so they can't break them out.
So I can find how many are on SNAP. I can find how many are on Medicaid.
My issue is that maybe it's more so with the title of that.
Yeah. Or we could say duplicated.
Just jump out of that.
Yeah. Yeah. But our workers process that many different cases. Yeah. Any other questions, topics? Things for next time. Otherwise, we will meet August 4th, will be our next meeting. Same time, same place. If there's nothing else for the good of the order, motion to adjourn. Second? All approve? Aye. Any denial? I don't think so. Thanks for coming, everybody. Motion passed.